they've got until Tuesday to declare. So we could see this number double by...
We're going to see a lot more names, I would suspect. I mean, big names like Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary, almost certainly going to declare tomorrow, on top of the 8 who already have done so. Penny Mordaunt, maybe, as well, much talked about. And as you say, there could be a couple more, but they are going to get whittled down pretty quickly because that voting is almost certainly going to begin on Wednesday. And I would suspect we're going to have a vote either every day or potentially a couple of votes every day to try and whittle that number down to 2 by the following week so that Conservative members get to decide. It is fascinating where there is now a big divide and a real competition between some of the candidates who declared about taxation. But
tax is going to be it.
It is going to be it about whether it is now the right time to start cutting taxes. Now, clearly the government to date, it must be said, with Boris Johnson as Prime Minister, but also as Rishi Sunak as Chancellor, were making the case this is not the time to cut taxes with inflation so high, i.e. we can't really afford it with our interest rate payments, and also it might fuel that inflation. But clearly a lot of candidates, Tom Tugendhat's been on this morning, and others, and I think he's doing, and talking to Alistair Stewart a little later on, he's saying he wants to see tax cuts pretty soon. So that's going to be a really totemic issue.
Has Rishi shot himself in the foot with that then by declaring out and out that they're not going to come down anytime soon?
Well, I mean, it's difficult to tell. I mean, his case, the point he would make is that we need some fiscal discipline at the moment. And there are a lot of Conservatives who understand that as well. As in, you know, our debt is high, it is rising, our interest rates, so the interest that we pay on our debt is something like £30 billion a year. I mean, extraordinary numbers, and that's not sustainable.
But has he lost the argument in saying, well, I was the Chancellor, therefore I understand these things better than anybody else? Because Sajid Javid was Chancellor, and he's come out and said, I want to reduce corporation tax down to 15%.
Yeah, and of course it is Rishi Sunak who raised it. Yes, of course. I mean, this is the thing. When you've been in governments...
Well, that's it. How much is that going to rear up and bite in the bum?
Of course it will.
People who have already been in government and may have... some Tories will say have caused the problem that ousted Boris.
No, definitely, and we know that they will be held to the records. The problem, of course, is then you can flip that argument around for some of the candidates who've never been in government. You know, these people are not just going to become Conservative Party leader, they're not just going to become leader of the opposition, they are immediately going to become Prime Minister. If you've never served in a government department, that is quite a leg up. The other thing I'd have to say to look out for is, again, we don't really know lots of these people. I mean, people at Westminster don't know them. As in, now, journalists, others, competitors, opponents will start looking into their pasts. They will start to really question about what they stand for. And also, they will brutally be exposed to, you know, really difficult questions, to lots of media glare. Some of them will stumble, some of them will fall. And that's, I mean, it's a brutal contact sport politics. We're going to see that very much play out over the next 10 days or so.
Is there an appetite, though? Because certainly when you look at what our viewers and listeners are saying to us, the majority, not all, the majority are furious at the way Boris has been handled in all of this. They think that's been done very, very badly. But as a result, that does mean a lot of people who were in Cabinet and a lot of people who've resigned from Cabinet, they just say they're snakes in the grass.
Yeah,
and so is it time for some new blood?
No, indeed, and I think there will be a certain section of the party and a certain section of Conservative members who will not vote, for example, for Sajid Javid or for Rishi Sunak, maybe even not for Nadhim Zahawi, considering in the end he called for the Prime Minister to go. They will probably not vote for them because they see them as treacherous, and they see that they've brought down a Prime Minister who, you know, he would claim had a mandate for 40 million people and was personally very, very popular. So, yes, you've got all these factors to play, and that is why, fundamentally, even though when you look at the numbers at the moment in terms of MPs backing certain candidates, Rishi Sunak is certainly out in the lead, but this race is so unpredictable, really unpredictable, because we haven't got the final set of names, we don't know how it's going to play out, and in the end, when it does get down to the final two, it is up to Conservative members, the 150,000 out there in the country, who will ultimately decide.